this brings us to number 6, is that you wouldn't set any expectations with your leads. If you wanted to get less deals under contract, you would just accept things like, call me next spring, or, well, let me talk to my wife about it and I'll let you know next week. You would just accept those at face value instead of
digging deeper and asking better questions. I'll use an example. Actually, we have a newer rep. He's been here just under a month, and I was really proud of him listening to this call because he gets an older guy on the phone. The guy goes, "No, I'm not selling." He goes, "Okay, you don't think you're selling this year?" He goes, "No, I'm selling this year." Wait a minute. He just said, "I'm not selling and I'm selling this year." He's like, "Oh, does that mean you're going to sell by like October?" He's like, "No, I'm not going to sell by October. I'm going to sell by May." "Oh, are you thinking like sometime this summer?" He's like, "Yeah." "Okay, how come?" And he's like, "Oh, we're moving to Florida. My wife's already down there, and we just need to find the house. We just haven't picked it out yet, but once we find it, then we'll know what we're going to move into." And the first answer was, "No, I'm not selling," turned into, "Yes, I'm selling and I have a plan to move," that turned into an appointment because he was willing to ask better questions.
I love that. And it's a lack of understanding of, if I get randomly cold called, or if I fill out a web form and then a company contacts me, what would I say? How would I behave? Would I tell them the truth in the first 30 seconds of talking to a stranger? Probably not, because I'm worried that they're going to use it against me, right? Or I don't know them. Are they going to steal my data and sell it to some data farm in Pakistan? I don't know, right?
They could.
It happens.
Yeah.
What's an example of setting proper expectations with a lead to give yourself, I guess, to maximize the ability for using that frame, right, to do the opposite? What's the right way to manage leads?
Yeah, so if we didn't want to set expectations with the lead, we probably wouldn't tell them what our value is. We probably wouldn't help them understand what their next step is, which a lot of times is just communication amongst spouses.
So when you say defining the next step, that is everything. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's trying to get as granular as you can to chunk down what is the thing that's going to help them move forward. So maybe it's a conversation with the spouse because they actually aren't on the same page. Husband wants to move, wife doesn't yet. What does that timeline actually look like for them? What do they want to go to? Maybe it's something like, I haven't even started looking to see what I want to go and get into. Okay, well, how much would that cost you? I have no idea. Okay, so are you going to look in what city, by what date, by what time, and then when are you going to get back to me on that? Okay, and so then we schedule a specific date and time for that next follow-up. But again, when I first started this, just like you said, you don't know what questions to ask until you've gone through this. And I used to ask him, like, why would I ask that? All the time. and then I'd get the answer. I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's because I didn't understand where the exits were on the pathway. And so that's very common for a lot of new people to do. And the only way I think you really go about that is to talk with people and then hear their stories of how they made their decisions. And that's going to start to inform your decision-making process.
What about, Cory, I think I'm going to fix up the property myself. I mean, I know it needs some work, but then once I fix it, I'll get my number.
That's great. When do you think you're going to start that renovation? And what do you think you're going to do first? And so then they're going to tell you, I don't really know. Okay, so do you think you're going to do the flooring first? Well, no, that sounds like too much work. I don't know how to do that. Okay, do you think you're going to do the cabinets first? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, what do you think you actually are going to do?
Yeah. And
what's going to add the value?
Yeah, and how much is that going to cost?
And yeah. Well, they have to tell you what they want to do, and then you can ask, like, how much is it going to cost? And they're going to say, I have no idea. Oh, or they're going to say, well, I was looking at toilets at Home Depot, and they're like $250. And I can buy a can of paint for $20. And so that's how much it's going to cost me.
Right.
Okay.
But then what would be, let's use that example. That's an avatar that we see very commonly, where people, they have a little bit of pain. They just reality hasn't quite set in yet about the amount of money, time, and effort it would actually take to remodel their property so that they can get top dollar, which they think they want. So they're in this early stages of pain where a few months from now, we see it all the time. Did they remodel it?
Never.
Very, very rarely.
Every once in a while people will, but it is quite rare.
Yes.
And it's usually somebody who's done it before. They have a history of doing that and being successful with it.
So if somebody told us that, what would be the way that we set the very next step for them and get them to agree to a micro commitment or an action step that we can best set ourselves up for lead follow-up?
Yeah. Let's say we went down the path of, I'm going to remodel the bathroom. That's awesome. When do you think you're going to go and do that? When do you think you're going to pick up the materials? Okay, you're working on it. Do you have time during the week? No, I can only work on the weekends. So we had one 2 or 3 weeks ago doing this. I've got to clean out the house. It's going to take me 2 to 3 weeks to do. I don't want to meet yet. I'm going to be doing XYZ to get a higher number. Then they'll list for sale by owner. So great. So in a couple of weeks, what does that put us? Next Saturday, next Sunday? Okay, so by next Sunday night, you're going to have done what? Well, I'm going to have it cleaned out, and I'm going to have the bathroom demoed and ready. Are you going to buy your materials by then? Yeah, I'll have bought my materials by then. Okay, great. Do you want to send me a picture of what that's going to look like? I'd love to see what your progress is. Okay, so by next Sunday night, I'd love to hear how that's going. What time are you going to give me a call? They're not going to give you a call.
Yeah. So, and I know you went through that quickly, but that's where tonality comes into play, where if you're approaching this from a how do I help you? Oh, great. You're going to remodel the bathroom? That's where you have to, that curious tone. If you use the right tone, you can ask anything you want without it sounding like an interrogation.
Yeah. If I instead said, what kind of toilet are you going to get? What kind of vanity? Do you know how much that costs? Are you really going to do that work?
You're going to get hung up on, for sure.
They're going to say, goodbye, jerk. Okay,
yeah.
That's it.
But it's like, oh, great. What are you going to do to the bathroom to maximize the value? What do you think that's going to cost?
You know what I see a lot of people do is like, well, don't you know that if you put money into that, it's not going to actually increase the value of your home, because they're trying to strike that objection down and take away their hope.
You can't do that.
Oh, now you're just competing with their perspective.
You're just arguing.
You're arguing with them. I see so many of our reps do that because they're trying to logic them into the solution. I was like, that
doesn't work.
That's great. What's going to happen when you call them back up and they haven't done that? Now they feel like you told them not to do it. They didn't do it. Now they don't even want to talk to you about it.
Absolutely. It erodes trust. Yeah. It has to be their decision. We have to ask the questions so that it's their choice and their decision. So that's why, great, you're going to get some bids on what that's going to cost. Well, I'm happy to help you. We do, we work on houses all the time. We know some contractors. How about, when do you think you're going to have those bids back? Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm happy to look those over for you to make sure you're not getting taken advantage of, Cory, because you know how contractors are. I can't tell you how many times with other sellers we work with, they get scammed out of $20,000. This last week, we bought a property from a seller. They charged her $35,000 to redo her roof. Did you know that?
Yeah. That's such a powerful technique because you're offering help.
Yes.
I'll give a couple examples where that can also be useful. If you're competing on offers and somebody gets there first, you can say, hey, just for free, we can review their offer and tell you what you should look out for. Why would you do that?
Well, because there are these people called wholesalers, and they don't have proof of funds. They have no way to close on the property. They put these long inspection clauses in there, and they back out the day before closing after you packed up all your stuff. Can you imagine? I mean, what would happen if something like that happened to you?
2 weeks ago, we had a lady do that, send over the contract. And I was like, yeah, it looks like this. Hey, by the way, have they come back to ask you for a reduced price after their inspection? Because I see that right here in the clause. They're probably going to do that. A week later, I call her back up. Hey, did they do that? Yeah, they did. But I only gave up this much. Thanks for letting me know. And then I was the first person she called back when she said, oh, by the way, I have another property I want to go look at. Why? Because I didn't say, you made a stupid mistake by signing with this other person.
Yeah, I told you so.
Yeah.
That's how most people are going to...
Because I'm right.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
It's not about people. Again, it is that servant-based mindset of they have to be the ones that make the decision. I have a toddler, and she's going through this thing right now where everything has to be her choice. What color bib do you want? What do you want, a big spoon or a little spoon? What shoes do you want to wear? Do you want to put them on, or do you need some help tying your shoes? Literally giving her choices is building up her independence and confidence. And if you don't give her the choice and you just say, here, you have to take this, here, put this on, here, it's time to go, that's a recipe for disaster and you get a tantrum. It's the same thing with sellers, right? People have so much emotion, memories, finances tied up into these decisions. It has to be their decision. It can't be yours.
Yeah, so many good examples here we could go through, but let's keep moving on.
100%. So number 7, you'd probably switch strategies every week, month, or year, chasing the hot new thing. So maybe that's Airbnb arbitrage. Maybe that's novations. Maybe that's a cash offer. Maybe it's flipping.
I should go buy a storage unit.
Oh, storage. Yeah.
I should get in commercial space now.
Airbnbs.
Land is really cheap. I should do that. You just never build the skill set.
Yeah.
We wonder why it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe it's wholesaling, or maybe it's creative finance or rentals or whatever. You are not giving yourself enough time to become good at anything. You'll become mediocre at everything.
Yeah.
And again, back to expectations, it always takes more time, costs more, and is harder than you think. Always.
Yeah, and it's really hard to, gosh, what did we just say? It took us almost a year to get good at novations. I wouldn't even say good, but just a hell of a lot better than we were.
Yeah.
And we did it every day, trying to work on all the the little intricacies of here's how we, okay, now we don't have to get the seller's signature to sign every single counter. Okay, great. Here's how we set the expectations when we were closing the appointment, so that way they don't blow up the first time there's a showing that's going to happen. Oh, just like today, every time we list a property that's going to be more than $100,000 more than what they signed for, they're going to freak out because they think that the delta between the dollar sign that's on the listing and what they agreed to is what they're not going to get.
Let's actually talk about that one. So this guy signed. He has a reverse mortgage. It's a pretty big property in Boise, somewhat newer. It has a little bit of deferred maintenance, but it's not something you would want to flip because it just doesn't need that much work.
And it's also massive. And so it's 4,500, 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
The cost of that would be high.
Astronomical, right? He owed, because he inherited it, I think,
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it has a reverse mortgage. So I guess he inherited it with a reverse mortgage on it.
Yes.
So he's losing equity every single month.
No, $145 a day.
He's losing $145 a day.
A day.
Of equity.
Yes.
That adds up quick.
A day.
A day.
Yes.
What is that times 30 days?
You're going to put me on the spot with math.
It's
like $4,500.
Yeah. It's about $4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy criminy. So he's losing $4,000 of equity a month. We couldn't get it at a cash price deep enough versus what he owed, right?
To close it out quickly.
It quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because of what the current value was. So we signed it on our equity protection program, aka Novation. So now we're not going to be the buyer. We are marketing it on Zillow, Redfin, the MLS for him. And then we're making the spread. So we got it under contract at what?
It was about $75 net to him, and then $850 roughly was what the payoff was. So about $925 entry fee. Okay.
So under contract for $925. What did we list it at?
$1,099,000.
Right. So about $175K more than what he owes on, or what is owed to him on the property.
Correct.
So he saw the listing go live yesterday, and
Yes.
he's like, holy crap, they're making $175K on my property because they listed it way higher.
I need to renegotiate. I'm getting taken advantage of. Some expectations need to be reset.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the realtor fees and commissions on that alone are going to be over $50,000 at that price point.
Yes.
Plus, it has some deferred maintenance. So, you're going to give up. We're probably going to have to redo a roof and some other things. So that's going to be another 20, 25K maybe on a property that size. Plus, if you have to offer any seller credits for rates or anything like that, you're talking another 20, 25, maybe more on a property that size. So already there, you're talking potentially $100,000 in costs.
Yeah, and then we're dealing with the reverse equity piece where he's losing, but the way we structured it was a net to him. So speed for us actually makes a difference.
Yes.
And so it's all expectation setting, which is, hey, we're going to have to market this property, but the first time you see it, you're going to have sticker shock.
And the reason we didn't list it at $999 was because there's less buyers in this price point already. So the difference between buyers that will be able to qualify to buy this over $100,000 at that price point is very marginal. Meaning like
a 1 million to 1.1 million, it's almost the same buyer pool.
Exactly. And because there's less buyers in this price point, it's just going to take a while to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we have to list it higher, is because we know it's going to take 60 to 90 days to sell, most likely, maybe more.
And it's going to come down in price.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're not going to get an offer at asking.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you handle these kind of conversations then? Because actually that doesn't happen that often.
Not with that big of a spread.
Yeah.
Not on most of our novations are closer to the median price point, so they're going to be between like 300 and 450,000 is more common than we do stuff in the higher price point just in our market right now.
Yeah.
And so the relative commission fees we're paying are a lot lower, and again, it's just the sticker shock isn't as much. Generally, when I approach those conversations, I want to first say like, "Hey, what's going on? What are you hearing?" And then they're going to tell me some BS. And it's like, is there by chance an issue that you saw what the listing was?
You're calling out the elephant in the room.
Yeah, and they're going to say yes.
Smart.
Okay, when you saw that, what did that mean to you? Oh, that you guys are making $100,000 or $200,000, whatever that is. Okay. And when we went into this, we talked about how we'd have to pay for marketing fees, and we are going to cover any repairs. And again, our profit on this is unknown at the time. We might make zero. I don't know what it's going to sell for. But here's how we're marketing it at this price, telling people we can come in and do repairs on their behalf, but knowing that's going to come out of our profit. If we do all that and you still get the number that you're okay with, and we can get this done for you, do you really care how much we make? And they're going to say yes. Okay, what's that number need to be? I don't know. Okay.
You're repeating the same thing that we should be saying right after or right as we're signing the novation documents.
Yeah.
We're signing the contract. Hey, as investors, we have to be able to make a profit. Are you okay with that? Yes, of course. I understand you guys have to be able to make something on this. Okay, great. Do you care if it's $1 or $1 million or anything in between? And usually you'll get a laugh because they'll say no. And then that sets you up for any type of thing, any post-contract negotiations that you have, because then you're going to be like, remember, we talked about this. We're going to make some money on this. I don't know what it's going to be because of all the reasons you listed, repairs, agent fees, whatever. Is that still okay with you that we make a little bit of money on this? Well, I didn't know it was going to be that much. Well, it's really not because.
Yep. And they don't want to hear the logic behind it, but we have to actually bring that in. And normally, again, we're just reselling them that it's the convenience, the certainty, and the ease, and we're going to get this done for them. And I promise you, we're not making a killing on this, and we won't sell it for what you see there.
Right. And let's say we do get an offer that's really high that we don't expect. We'll just double close it then.
What does that mean?
It means we'll actually buy the property, and then the end buyer will come in with the funds and we'll make a difference. And we'll have to pay some transactional fees to have that 24-hour funding. But that's how we'll handle that. That way, the seller can't actually see what our novation fee would be. But that is very, very rare.
What's kind of our cutoff we've used in the past? Is like 50, 75 grand?
What's our highest novation fee we've ever had? I think it was like 60 or 70.
Yeah, and I think
we didn't double close that.
We didn't. We had a really cooperative seller on that one.
Yeah.
We've had others where it's been 40 or 50, and they have not. Like, we'll get a disgruntled seller at the closing table.
Yeah. Sometimes not, though. That was one of my big objections in the beginning, is because as a wholesale, right, your seller can't see what you're making. On a novation, your seller can see what you're making. So that was one of my big objections, is like, how are they going to be okay with this when they see that we're making 30 grand on their $400,000 house? And actually, it doesn't come up very often. Maybe 1 out of 20 times.
No, because we also make sure we reset the expectation that they are going to get, and we put it in there, they're going to get 300,000, whatever that number is.
Right.
And we tell them that, and like, okay, and the only thing that's going to get taken out of this are anything you owe, or taxes, or again, bills that are due and you owe them. So, and as long as those numbers align at the end of the day and we repeat that statement, they're usually okay with it.
All right, number 8, allowing opinions of others to dictate your behavior. Oof.
There's so many ways that this can be taken. Let's take it back to kind of our sales team. So let's say that we end up in a situation where you get yelled at. Yep. You are being called a scammer, a professional equity stealer,
a vulture,
a scum, a used car salesman, whatever they choose to use, right?
Yeah.
You can take that, and that's an opinion of somebody else, and then you can let that impact your ability to have a quality conversation next. Meaning you can either not press the dial button, go mope around, take a walk, whatever you need to do, or you can just say, that's okay, I'm going to press the dial button and talk to Granny, who's really sweet and she's really nice next. I just don't know who that person's going to be.
You know what really grinds my gears? We have a policy that we teach from day one that every lead that we talk to
Yeah.
or that we follow up with needs to have a triple tap and a text. So a triple tap is if we call them, they don't answer, we hang up, we immediately call back. If they don't answer, hang up, we immediately call back a third time. Okay? That is like the number one thing when you see, we might have a people pleaser personality in this role and they need to get used to this level of volume. That is, how many times do we see it even now with people that we've had on our team for months and months and months? They don't want to do it.
All the time. Where it becomes more of an issue is they'll triple tap somebody that they don't know, but then they've started to develop a relationship and like, well, I don't want to piss him off now because I've really got Carl on the line. Like Carl and I, we're bros. He's going to sell to me. Carl that doesn't remember who you are.
Exactly. No, it's exactly the truth, right?
Yeah.
And the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this earlier. It's a timing thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is, are you at the right place at the right time?
Yeah, so that internal fear of someone else picking up the phone on the third dial is the fear that they're going to be upset with you and that's their opinion. And then all of a sudden that's going to make it harder for you to do your job or to make a relationship, get a contract, whatever that is.
Now, the one time we won't triple tap is, let's say we've set an action step with somebody. Great, you're going to talk to your wife and we're going to have another call Monday at 10 a.m. And you're going to call me and you're going to say what she decided or what you guys decided, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you guys are going to do next. Perfect. And then she actually calls at 10 a.m. We have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Great, you guys decided this is a May thing for you. Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not going to then blow them up a bunch of times in between because they've told me the exact truth of why May is their time frame. Well, my son's in school. And so we're going to wait until after he graduates, blah, 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 before we actually start looking for anything. I'm not then a week later going to triple tap them. They just told me that they're waiting till May because my son is graduating, because I got to the truth. So that's the one exception is like, no, you're not triple tapping every single time. You're triple tapping people because they won't tell you the dang truth. That's it. Once we have the truth with the lead, we don't need to treat them like that anymore. But you know as well as I do, that's the game, is like how quickly and efficiently can we get to the truth with these leads, because people lie and people think that if I'm going to tell you the truth, you're going to use it against me.
Yeah. You think you give up leverage.
Absolutely. How about number 9? Being dishonest with yourself about what you really want, because it's easy to say I'm committed, but it's hard to be committed.
I like, again, how Alex Hormozy says a lot of like, well, it's not are you or aren't you? It's like how committed are you? And when we're talking to a lot of our people that we bring on, they want something. They have no idea how long it's going to take, how much effort it is, and they have an idea in their mind that's the expectation thing, and then that expectation gets reset. And then they have to go through the mental hurdle of, after my expectation has become more informed, I have more information, am I as committed now as I said I was before?
Oof.
And the hard part for most people that we've brought on that haven't worked out is that then they're not willing to tell us that they're willing to have a lower financial thermostat, because again, it's a defeat or admission of failure rather than admission of what they want, which is really tough. So
give me an example.
I'll just use an example.
Someone comes in, they're like, this is something we hear all the time.
God.
Cory, I want to make 6 figures.
I want to make 6 figures is everyone's answer to that question. Like, okay.
Because that's how you can tell that there's danger ahead.
Yes. Because
it's literally just this completely random, ambiguous number that they think signifies that they've made it.
Success. Yeah. That's what success means. I'll be happy once I make that.
Yikes. That means you need to dig deeper. If you hear something like that, you need to be like, okay, why does making $100,000, like, what does that actually do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what it's going to take to get there? No. Do you like really understand?
Yeah, but a lot of times people don't know that, and they won't even know that until they've actually put in some action and seen. And so just for reference in our company, we didn't do this 2 or 3 years ago. We're like, yeah, you can totally make that. We didn't really give them a path. Now we at least like we broke it down to say like, okay, if you do something consistently, like let's say it's schedule this number of appointments, attend this number of appointments, and close at this rate. Here's what that adds up to if you do this month over month over month. Here's how you get to that number you want. And they'll see that and they'll say, oh, great, I can set 72 appointments in a month. I can do that. And then they go a month in, and then we have this conversation again, and they've scheduled 5 or 10 or 30. And sometimes they'll still say, well, I want to put that as my stretch goal. And then we get to day 90 and they'll be like, I'm actually, I'm really okay making like 55. Oh, and there's the truth. Like you want to make 100, but once you've seen the amount of work it takes to get there, all of a sudden that halves. And it's okay. And we tell people that's fine as long as that's above our company minimum standard for what they want to make and produce in a year. But all of a sudden now their expectations are wildly different, but they have to admit that to themselves, and then they have to admit that to whoever else they told that they were going to make 6 figures by taking this job. That's tough. And that's where we see people flame out sometimes because they just don't know what they don't know, and then they're unwilling to accept the consequence of that reality and up their productivity, their skill set, whatever it is, to get to the number they actually want.
Right. And then they have a choice. Am I really willing to bet on myself knowing that my skills will improve, and over time it will take me less work to make the 55.
Mm-hmm.
And if I keep the same amount of work, my skills will elevate and I will make more money because I'm providing more value. I'm getting more contracts. I'm getting more appointments, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or they're just like, no, it's the thing. I'm working too hard at this and I'm not seeing the reward. It's the thing. Let me go join somewhere else. And then they restart all over again into the same cycle. And it takes people, I think, I don't know how many times on average it takes people to go through that. I'd be curious about that. But that's something we see with salespeople all the time. And then you have these one-off situations. So we have in our company a very real scenario that happened. We brought in an acquisitions person. At the same time, we had 2 acquisitions people leave.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to that person is now all of a sudden the 30, 60, 90-day training plan that we have, they got thrown into way more appointments than they otherwise would have. They got more contracts as a result because they were gifted more at-bats. They didn't build the muscle of setting their own appointments themselves. And then, what's going to happen when now more people join the team, we get our sales staff to the proper head count, and now all of a sudden they have to build that muscle. They're doing more work and getting less contracts.
Yeah, that's tough. Right, because then the expectations, kind of like what you said earlier about like when the market's at your back, like when you are forced to have all the opportunity, it's a different skill set you build.
Absolutely.
And you have to, define. I will say actually on that note, then it comes back to your own idea of agency. And that specific individual made the comment, I understand that, and I don't believe that the staffing is going to have an impact on how much I make. Like I control that. I'm not willing to put that out to somebody else.
Which is exactly what you want to hear. And people that have that kind of attitude and mindset will be the ones that succeed because guess what? They believe that. And they're right.
Yes, absolutely. In which case I couldn't say nothing but like, you're right. Thank you. I wish everyone believed that.
Yeah, exactly. We wish everybody believed that.
Yeah.
In your experience, in our experience with salespeople so far, how many people get to that gut check moment of, oh, I really only want to do this much work and make this amount of money? How many of those people are actually like going to work out?
Not many.
Zero?
Zero. We've had 0 so far.
Yeah. Because if you're in sales, you should want to be financially driven.
Yeah, and I think that partially comes back to like, again, it's the effort versus the reward and the duration it takes to get there, and it just doesn't align with what some people want to do, and that's okay.
I think too, let's call a spade. This work from home environment thing, if you just zoom out and think, why do most people want a work from home job?
I think a lot of people think they have less accountability and it's easier.
Yeah.
They see like an Instagram post like, I can travel the world and be a digital nomad, or I can take care of my kids while I'm doing this. And it gives me a lot of flexibility, which it does. And It also means you have to have a lot more autonomy, and you have to have a lot more personal accountability, which is tough.
Yeah. And if you don't have that self-discipline with yourself, you're
Mhm.
doomed from the start.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a lot of instances of that, of like people get randomly pulled into like being the default childcare giver or default parent in those situations, instead of like getting a babysitter like most people do if they have to go to an office for work,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or like not having these interruptions during the day that you wouldn't have if you were in an office.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the expectation is like what was communicated probably at home. Oh, I'm going to take this job. Oh, I'm going to have a ton of flexibility. Oh, I can pick up childcare. Oh, I can do this.
It's like you can, but the hours that you're working, you better not be farting around. Like you better be completely dialed in and maximizing every minute if you want to have the freedom to do those other things. It doesn't mean you work less. That's the issue. The work needs doing.
Mhm.
Like it's not a matter of I'm going to work less. It's like, no, you just get to choose when you put in that time. That's the only difference.
We had a new hire start who had never worked from home before, and his comment, it was so true, and I just loved it. It was that every other job I've had has been an office job, and so I had not only just like support around me, but I was like, it was very structured. I knew like the hours I had to be there, and now like you guys just carry that like I meet my minimum standards and then can go above that each day, but I'm not like nobody's looking at me to do it. And I was like, well, we are, but like it's on your time. Like you choose your own schedule to get that done and then can achieve more. And he's like, it's so weird. Like, but what if I accomplish everything? I'm like, that's good. You can do more if you want to. If you don't want to, then that's fine. Like you choose how much you want to earn.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it was a complete mental reframe because it's like, well, but if 5 o'clock rolls around and my boss leaves, that means I can leave. I was like, it could be. Are you productive? And he's crushed it so far. I mean, he's hit every leading metric that we've asked of him.
Love that. I think that, you know, when you have these dinosaur companies or these really big companies and like putting in your time becomes the measure of like your output, that is a number one indication that your company is not running the way it should be.
I got such a good story to tell on that one. I had a boss when I was working in an engineering company who was the epitome of that. He would show up anywhere between 5 and 5:30 every morning in office. He would leave every day sometime between 6 and 6:30. And his perspective was time in office was what mattered. He was the least effective person that I've ever met in an office environment. And yet his perspective was that if he wasn't in office, that he was not being productive and not doing things. So he would have other managers equal to him, younger than him, like come in at like 7 and leave at 5:30 and actually get their shit done during the day and not mill around. And they got promoted faster. And he like couldn't understand why, because his hours were longer. And I just like being underneath him, I was like, how do you like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
Well, I think most companies that are of a certain size, that has everything to do with your culture, right? Is like, what are you rewarding and what are you acknowledging? So like, were there people above him or in those circles that were like giving him feedback that is a good thing to be doing?
Probably. I never had access to those conversations.
Yeah.
Probably.
Like set the example for the team.
Mm-hmm.
First one in, last one out. Set the example for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is then if you don't tie that back into like results driven, like what are you doing in those hours, then it's completely meaningless. Like imagine going to the gym for 3 hours and like
playing on your phone. Yes.
Yeah.
So people do.
Yeah. No, I know. We see those people all the time. Yeah. Or like going to a high intensity class workout for like 30 minutes, but it like pushes you every second. You're just huffing and puffing, right? It's the same exact thing. So at Offer Now Idaho, we're looking to hire A players to run our organization and help us grow our business. What's your favorite part about working at Offer Now Idaho?
I would say it's the culture. I really enjoy the people that we have here. They want to grow. They want to become better versions of themselves. They're hard charging. We're all pushing each other to be better. We're not two different teams competing on the same battlefield. We're one team practicing because we have a goal of helping 1 million people over the next 10 years. That's a big number. We can have an impact on people's lives while we're on that journey. And the work that you might do year 1 or in month 1 is going to have a positive impact on that family for the next decade. And that's huge.
The growth potential that we have, I mean, we could easily 2 or 3x here in the next few years. With what we've built, the type of people that we've attracted, and the type of people that we're going to attract, this thing is headed for the moon, and we have so many vacancies, and we need your help to fill them. Right now, we have a $3,000 referral program. If you know somebody that's looking for a new role, we will pay you $3,000 once that person is hired by us and they hit their 90-day mark. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a new job or looking to change their life, shoot me a DM at RealRyanWeimer on Instagram.
Let's get it.
All right. Number 10, avoiding all hard conversations with your spouse and family about the sacrifice it's going to take to achieve a financial goal in the future that you want. This one hits really hard.
This one hits really hard. Yeah.
Talk to me.
I'm on the therapist couch now. So
let's go.
Yeah, this one hits really hard. I will say I continuously fail at this. And it's the hardest thing for me is that when you are in a stage of growth, you may not be growing at the same pace as your spouse and in the same way. And so during a period like that, sometimes perspective, like for me, has changed on like what my values are and that I have to sacrifice certain things or time, and then communicating that back in an effective manner. Once like in my mind, I've made that decision, then what's the time between when I realize what I need to sacrifice and do, and then when I communicate that, and then when it's accepted? And the delay between those has created a ton of friction at times. And then you take that out and you extend that to like extended family. They're like, it's a Saturday or it's a Sunday. And why are you taking calls and not just spending family time? Does not compute.
Yeah.
And then it creates a ton of friction. And it's like you can either try to address that or you don't. And if you don't address it, it's just going to fester. How to address it is a tough challenge because it depends on like what their beliefs and values are. And that's where this comes in. There's some friction is like, what do you value versus what do they value? And can you have an open discussion and dialogue? That's where like we've really struggled at times is like bringing that full circle. And it takes constant communication.
Yeah. And we actually talked to our team about this morning in our town hall in person. And for those of you that don't know, a town hall, we just talk about our wins the prior month at a high level. Like, what do we do well? We have a salesperson of the month. We talk about our core values, examples of that. We highlight different members of the team. It's a really big rallying cry for people to feel a part of something. And we talked about this thing where it's not just in a professional context of like when, okay, I need to work more. My spouse may or may not agree, or my family members may or may not agree. It's also, are you delivering that same intentionality as a husband and as a father to your family, to your spouse? Are you scheduling date nights on the calendar proactively with them? Are you scheduling vacations or nights away or weekend family time on your schedule? I can tell you, I struggled with this too, but the second it changed everything was when I included my wife's email on the calendar invites, and I literally blocked it in the calendar of date night from this time to this time, babysitter from this time to this time, family time from this time to this time. Then it wasn't just me using that for like, oh, family comes second. No, it's just about priority setting and putting it on the calendar so that, again, the intentionality is there. It's not an afterthought, right? And if you don't do that and you just focus on like, oh, this stuff needs to happen, this stuff needs to happen, and then there's no priority setting with the other activities, then you're doomed because they hear what you're saying, but what do your actions show? Your actions show that you're actually not prioritizing that because it gets to Friday at lunchtime and she's like, what are you doing this weekend? And it's like, oh, well, I have to work. What? You didn't tell me that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Don't wait until Friday.
Oh,
when
yeah.
When it's the prior weekend or the Monday, even earlier, hey, I think I'm going to have to work this weekend. What's your schedule? Okay, I can work from this time to this time. Let's do our thing from this time to this time. Let's put it in the calendar. Boom. Way better success.
Way better success. Learn that one the hard way.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
It's with our sales team too, right? Because
Yeah.
we've talked about this as managers and leaders. We have a lot of evening appointments, right? Because our sellers are, a lot of times they get off at work at 5 or 4 or whatever. So we have a lot of 6 p.m. appointments, especially if it's a 6 p.m. appointment. It's like 45 minutes to drive there each way. The problem with that is they don't get home till like 9 or 9:30 at night. Maybe their spouse and kids have already gone to bed, and so they miss any kind of like family interaction that day. So what we have to do is we have to empower them to say, dude, we're going to be the gatekeeper of that for you. So we're going to make sure that there's not many of those in a row or whatever. But also I need you to put in times of like, hey, when you're going to do a date night, when you're not available for weekend appointments, those kind of things. And we empower them and we help have those proactive conversations to encourage that.
And I think that's something we've leveled up on. And it's unfortunately come because we've seen people who don't have those conversations proactively.
Yes.
It creates resentment. And then we start to hear these things like, where's this coming from? Like, where is that sentiment of like, you don't care about, or this is impacting my, and it's always like family. And it's like, okay, but you never told us that was important to you also. And you never told us that you wanted us to prioritize that. And you never told us that you put it on the calendar or tried to proactively schedule it. So now we have to ask our employees that question, because most of the time they're probably afraid to ask us that. Because they think, oh, if I don't prioritize work, then they're going to view me as not dedicated, or that I don't care, or that I don't want more opportunity in the future, which some people might.
Again, we don't care
We
as
don't
long
care,
as
as
you're
long
hitting
as-
your numbers.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I think that kind of autonomy and discipline, this kind of role and this kind of thing, like it forces you to be extra accountable in other parts of your life too. So it's not just in a professional context. Like
Yeah.
you're getting pulled in multiple directions. You're dealing with a lot of failure, and then you have to deal with all that stuff at home too. So hopefully that's a glass half empty look. On a glass half full look, I can say when I started cold calling and I started doing this, it made me a way better person, a way better father, a way better husband. I was able to have more meaningful conversations with my spouse. That's a real skill that develops from all this.
Yeah. Sales is understanding and persuasion. And so you get the ability to hear a bunch of different stories and then think how that relates back to your own personal life and circumstances and what your family's going through.
But it's much easier to avoid confrontation. That's
It
what
is.
most people do.
It is.
I mean, the amount of times people, like, we're amazed that, yeah, hey, I don't think I can go on, but my wife's kind of upset at me because I'm not spending enough time with my family. It's like, why haven't you scheduled more family time? Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you put it in the team calendar? You know what I mean? And so we have to then, as leaders, like, what are we doing to not
Encourage them to do that.
exactly?
Yeah. And probably it's because they've never been asked that question.
Right.
Ever. Because if they were at a job where they had specific hours and closing times, like that was the expectation. It's very well set that at 6 o'clock the dealership closes and you go home.
100%. All right. Number 11, you wouldn't track anything or keep yourself accountable.
Yeah, that's, again, comes back to fear. If you're afraid of what the consequence is, if you fail, then you're not going to want to track it.
Because you are afraid of what that outcome, that box to check yes or no, says about you as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're a failure. If the task is a pass or fail and it's a fail, then you inherently are a failure. That's so backwards.
Yeah, instead of looking as like a stack toward progress. That's again, just taking back to like the first month, it's really cool when you can say like, great, you have 50 hours of dial time that you've accumulated in the first month. How much better are you now? You have to be. It's forced learning.
Yeah, even with people that I coach in the Real Freedom community, this is always a sticking point of like, we provide a sheet for them to track all their KPIs, number of calls made, number of people contacted, number of appointments set, number of offers made. It's like 4 things, right? Guess how many people actually do it?
I would guess like 1 or 2 out of 10.
Very few. Yeah, very few, because not tracking it means that they don't have to keep themselves accountable. Well, then what happens? Well, then they're not getting as many appointments and contracts as they think. Well, why? Well, because they're not doing the leading metrics, because they're not holding themselves accountable. It really is that simple, though. Completely agree. If you can reframe your mindset to make it not about the outcome, but instead about the act of getting better, that's how this all works. All right. Number 12, you'd have poor financial habits and no budget. Meaning you'd always put yourselves in a situation where you cannot have delayed gratification. You have to have the gratification now. And life doesn't work like that. Building new skills doesn't work like that. Trying a new thing doesn't work like that. Starting a new role doesn't work like that. If you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck, you're not giving yourself any time to focus on anything. So you're going to be the person that 60 days into the new role, 60 days into wholesaling, 60 days into whatever your side hustle is, you're like, this is too much work. This is too hard because I got to pay the bills now. I can't make decisions that help future me. I have to help now me.
That's a really tough one because that kind of starts before everything else. If you're again, I guess I'll come back to Alex Hormozy and just say like he's got some great content about like if you're broke, like you really like are an advantage because
you have nothing to lose.
You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Just time. That's it. But yeah, sometimes it's really hard to pull yourself out of that when you don't feel like you have the capacity to pull your head above water. And so then like your mindset's not in a growth mindset. It's just in a scarcity mindset. It's really hard to get yourself out of that until you start to make better decisions, which can just stack slowly over time.
Love that. What are some ways that people could start having proper financial habits and budget?
Track it.
Track your net worth.
That's the most important thing. Even just like referenced them way too many times, but look at your bank account daily. Is it going up or going down? It's probably going to go up whenever you get a paycheck. How quickly does it go down? What are you spending your money on? Where can you make a little extra? It's actually a lot easier to make a little more generally than it is to save more.
Yeah, exactly.
And generally, if you're making money, you're not spending money at the same time.
Love that. And what you're doing when you're saving money is you're not only planning for future you, but you're also giving yourself a really strong foundation to take on more risks, develop a new skill, start a new thing, try a new thing. And you don't need to have, there's not like some plank that you're walking, that you're running out of feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
That eventually you're going to fall overboard. You're elongating how long you can delay to have that satisfaction. Because delayed gratification is the number one skill of entrepreneurship. It is. How long can you stick with the thing and do the thing and not quit to be able to get the result? If you can outlast everyone, you will be a guaranteed success because you're not quitting. How do you not quit? You give yourself some leeway. You give yourself some runway. All right, last one. Good one to end on. Self-limiting beliefs like, it's my market. There's not enough deals in my market. My market's saturated. Thoughts on that one?
Well, maybe you're right. And then, so what?
And
what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And those like three things, like who cares? Like you could continue just to be unsuccessful. But I think the biggest thing that we continue to learn is that there's just no lack of deal flow. And it's really easy to say that, but like truly, I'll just say in our market, often the properties that we see other wholesalers sending out aren't even in our damn database.
Like 90% of the time,
Yes.
when we get sent another wholesaler's deal, we look up the address and it's not even a lead in our
And
system.
we don't have that big of a market.
No.
And
That's insane, dude.
And
It's
so,
so true.
when I think about that, it continues to reinforce that there's no lack of people who need help out there. We just don't know how to get in contact with them. It's just we're just oblivious and ignorant to that, more so than there's a lack of leads.
Yeah. And I think it's through that frame of how does a thought like that serve you? Like, okay, great, your market's Los Angeles or San Diego or Miami or New York or whatever. Think of the most competitive market you possibly can, right? And the highest price point. What does that do to your behavior? So what? Are you going to go switch markets? Okay, then go all in and switch markets. It doesn't matter what you decide. It just matters that you decide. Like these kind of thoughts are trying to keep you safe in your head, what you perceive as safe, right? And so that limits your action. We want to have frames of thought that encourage action, that encourage growth and positivity.
Yeah, and the biggest thing there is if you tell yourself that you can't be successful, that's a surefire way not to be successful. And if you want to prove to yourself that you could be successful, just find literally anyone else that is doing it in your market at slightly more than you and say, well, why couldn't I be that person? They don't have to be crushing it. They have to be doing one more deal than you a month. Maybe that's one.
Yep.
Somebody's out there doing that. That's it.
Well said. Anything else to close this episode out with? That was 13 ways to not do deals.
And not make more money.
And not make more money. Pick one of those out, guys, if you're listening to this or watching this. Which one of those can you work on today? Can you implement today? Do the opposite.
Yeah. The one thing I would say that I think is really common, which is like not doing action, like think about that probably before everything else. And
Yes.
all the ways that we avoid action in a day, whether it's Instagram or Netflix, scrolling our phone, reading news, and pick one of those things and see if I could limit that for even a period of time. That's it.
Love that. That's about chunking down to small wins. That
Yeah.
I love that tip. Or putting your phone on grayscale. We talked to our team about that today.
Mm-hmm.
Putting your phone on grayscale supposedly limits your activity and screen time by 30%. I mean, I've done it, and it makes it a lot less appealing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at black and white stuff. It's not as fun. So you do it less. It makes sense.
It
But
does.
these little hacks, like we have to change our environment sometimes to help us, not hurt us.
Absolutely.
All right, Cory, it's been a good one. Good couple episodes here. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.